everyone, it's me Crafty and welcome back to my channel. So I thought I would do a video about ancestral magic, working with your ancestors, connecting with your ancestors, all that kind of rolled into one. Now, I was raised pagan and later came into contact with witchcraft. I don't know what year it would have been, like 91, 1990, somewhere, I don't know. It's been so long, it's somewhere around there. And once I came onto the path of witchcraft, it really felt like I had finally come home. Now, when I say I was raised pagan all my life, there's earlier videos I've discussed that. My grandparents were medicine people. They were of mixed blood. They were Cree and Anishinaabe and, you know, Scottish and Irish and all that other fun stuff. And so we grew up with those traditional kind of Native American practices. However, it wasn't strictly Native American. My grandmother, my Cookum, that in Cree it's Cookum for grandmother, and then Mushum for grandfather. But she would read palms and tea leaves, and that was something that she had done since she was a young girl, and that is definitely not a traditional Cree or traditional Native American thing at all. And my grandfather, actually, some of his healing techniques were definitely of European origin, and even some of the materials that he would use, like for instance like asafoetida, that kind of thing, I mean, that did not come from here. And he would trade with other people and all that kind of stuff. So there's, and then yeah, we were just kind of like mixed bloods, and we grew up honoring our ancestors all the time. So anytime there was any kind of feast or giveaway ceremony or a sweat lodge, or anytime that there was any kind of like big family dinner, whether let's say there was a funeral or a graduation or a wedding or anything like that where a large number of us were gathered, there'd be a whole spread of food set out. And what we would do would be, we'd get a plate, and before anybody could even eat, and like right after the prayers were said, we would then take a little bit of each food item that was there, that was being served to the living, and we would make a plate for the dead first. So we would literally serve the dead, and then once we had that plate full of food, we would then either put a cigarette or a pinch of tobacco onto that plate, like on one little portion of that plate as well. And then we would take the plate and then go put it out in the woods, and then that would be for the ancestors. Sometimes that food would be burnt or buried. So that's just how we chose to continue to like invite our ancestors, you know, to participate with our celebrations or whatever it was. And it was also a way for us to be able to feed them, spiritually speaking, and to remember them and still honor them and still have that connection with them. And we still do this, and that hasn't stopped. And that's something that, I mean, it's almost like you don't even have to think about it anymore, because it's such a common thing. Like you make the offering plate, you don't even think about it really, and then you say your prayer, you invite your ancestors to come, and then that's it. You can invite them into your rituals, your spell work. You can talk to them, pray to them, and ask them for guidance, ask them for assistance, give thanks to them for the spiritual lessons or teachings that they've handed down to you. You can connect with them in so many different ways. You could go to their graves and leave offerings at their graves. You can just remember them, talk about them, write about them, share stories to your children about them. And if you don't know who your ancestors are, you can research about them. There's so many different websites, genealogy and all kinds of things. You know, you can talk to older members of your family and ask stories and write them down or videotape them would be the best way. Like, looking back, I really wish I videotaped more stories, or stories period, from my grandparents. And I wish I got more videos of my parents even sharing stories from their families and things like that. And then that way you have that with you, because eventually your parents die, your grandparents die, they leave, and then you're like the next generation to go, kind of thing, which is where I find myself now. Like, my mom, my dad, my aunts, my uncles, all of them, my grandparents, all of them are gone. They've all crossed over. So like, when I do any kind of ritual work or spell work or anything where I am inviting in my ancestors or calling upon them for help of some sort, I always invite them in by saying, like, I invite in my ancestors from the most recent to the most ancient. And so the most recent ancestors would be like my mom and my dad and my grandparents, the ones that I've grown up knowing but have crossed over into the spirit world, that are no longer in the land of the living. And then the most ancient ancestors would be, in my mind, I go back to as far as I can. Like, I visualize like the ancestors that, you know, chased the woolly mammoth and lived in caves, like the cavemen and women back in the day. We all had ancestors that came from way back then. And, you know, I think about our ancestors that walked this earth that didn't even have, like, maybe they were just learning to develop language and learning to develop which berries were poisonous and which, you know, fruits were poisonous and which roots were good for healing, for this and for that. And I mean, how much trial and error would they have to go through to even come up with that knowledge to pass on to the next generation? And then, yeah, anyway, I'm getting off track, but for me, that's what I do. I invite from the most recent to the most ancient of my ancestors, and I talk to them. And when I pray to them, I just talk to them. I'll give thanks for blessings, you know. For instance, my son was in a car accident not too long ago, and it was pretty scary. They hit a big moose, and, you know, he could have died, but somehow, luckily, that moose, like, it shattered the window on his side. Like, my son was covered in broken glass and blood and bits of meat and fur and all kinds of stuff. But the moose, instead of going into the cab of the vehicle, and it would have killed him, rolled up over top the vehicle. And so I gave prayers of thanks to divinity and to my ancestors and the angels and spirit guides and all the good spirits that are out there, the entities that are watching over my children and me, because I believe that we do have entities and spirits, if you will, that watch over us. We can call them guardian angels, we can call them whatever we want, but I believe in that we do have that. And, you know, if you're intimidated, maybe you're going in for a job interview, maybe, you know, you have to go to court, maybe you have to go meet with a lawyer, maybe you have to do whatever, maybe you have to give a statement to the police about something and you're scared and you're nervous, you can call upon your ancestors to lend you their strength to come and be with you and walk with you, so that you don't feel alone, and hopefully you can really feel their strength and their love and their support and guidance with you during your time of need. So by all means, start working with your ancestors, call out to them, speak to them, talk to them. It doesn't have to be an elaborate ceremony. It can be, there's nothing wrong with that, but it could be very casual. You know, I talk literally to my parents every day. You know, I could be driving to work and I'll talk to my mom, you know, and it's not like you could say it out loud or you could say it in your mind, you know, but I believe she hears, you know, she can feel whenever I'm communicating with her. And they can come to you in visits, you know, it could be dream time visits. the knowledge they can impart with you can be like all of a sudden you suddenly know things, or you suddenly remember things, and it could come to you in other ways, like maybe an older relative will sit down with you and share some knowledge and wisdom with you, or whatever the case might be. There's so many different ways that they can still kind of communicate with us, right? So it could be through different forms of divination, it could be through dream work, it could be through astral work, it could be through a whole wide variety of things. So if you've never tried working with your ancestors, I highly recommend it. I think this is really important, especially for people that are adopted, or maybe don't know a whole lot, or anybody that, you know, maybe people that grew up in the foster care system. You know, you might not know much about your ancestors. Maybe all you have is a name to go by, and that's it. So that's okay. That's a start. And even if you don't have that, you can still tap into your ancestral line. And don't worry about, you know, people are like, well, what about the bad ones, you know, the murderers and the rapists and all that. You know what? Every family tree has a few nuts, right? So yeah, I mean, it gives character, you know, you take the good with the bad. However, you can express, you know, that you wish to connect with the more positive ancestors in your ancestral line, right? So that's all I have to say for now. I feel like I've really rambled on a lot. Thank you for being patient with me, and we'll see you guys soon. Ciao.